We want to make Sokuzan's teachings available to all who would benefit from hearing the Dharma from his perspective. You may relate to this if you are returning to these talks time and again and find value in them. Consider supporting us financially and participating with questions during Dharma talks and at book studies. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is ChokuDawa. Tonight, I will endeavor to talk about the second of the four reminders. The short title would be Impermanence. I think it was about a month ago I talked about the first reminder, and the other three seem to bleed in to that one. That'll probably happen with this one as well, because they tend to do that. So the four reminders that turn the mind toward the Dharma. The first one that I talked about before goes, first, contemplate the preciousness of being free and well-favored. This is difficult to gain, easy to lose. Now I must do something meaningful. So immediately in that first one, the second one is right there where it says difficult. This is difficult to gain, easy to lose. So as Buddhists, we're saying to look at how precious it is to be born as a human in the human realm, relatively free and well-favored. There are probably examples of humans who don't have that, but we're looking at a human being who has some suffering but isn't particularly in a war zone, has maybe enough food, community, things like that. And on top of that, we say well-favored in the sense that it's a human being who's run into a Dharma teaching, a Dharma teacher, a Dharma community, Dharma meaning truth, and in our situation, Buddha Dharma. So this preciousness, it's very hard from the point of view of things being born. The percentage, the chance that you would be born as a human is quite low. And there are traditional examples of that. And on top of that, it's very easy to lose this precious human birth. So the second one, I'll read it. Second, the world and its inhabitants are impermanent. In particular, the life of beings is like a bubble. Death comes without warning. This body will be a corpse. At that time, the Dharma, or the truth, will be my only help. I must practice it with exertion. So the word impermanence, just flashing on that word, there's a duality that comes up with the word permanent being its opposite. And contemplating that, I have a hard time finding anything that's permanent. However, there's some kind of mechanism of identity that uses maybe an illusion of permanence to ignore or cover up. And I think on a survival level, there's nothing wrong with that. We do a lot of ignoring to survive. And it seems that we take that survival too far at times. So the word impermanent is pointing to the big one is just physical death of the body. And that can bring up fear, fear of the unknown. We don't really know what happens when we die. There's lots of speculation. And I tend to contemplate death kind of within living life. All the deaths that we suffer through. Lots of examples, like you think you're married and then you're divorced, or you think you're the president of a country and a few hours later you're in a prison in another country. Impermanence. And this phrase says death comes without warning. And that's an interesting phrase because we could logically say that some of us may know the doctor gives you 3 months to live. Maybe you beat the odds and you have 3 years, or maybe you die sooner than that. So there can be a kind of warning, but to me, it seems to point to even if you knew the exact moment you were going to die, are you prepared? Is there enough mind training to observe that process? This is an interesting topic. It's hard to contemplate not knowing what death is like, other than how it occurs in our lives. And that seems to be an echo of what the physical death of the body might be like. That surprise moment where I think in my last talk, I talked about you put your hand in your pocket and your wallet isn't there, or your car won't start, all the little deaths through life that are forms of suffering. But how our mind reacts to those situations is a good thing for us to see. I think some things are even so painful that we would prefer death, even though we don't know what it is. So these reminders, just the word reminder, it's reminding us of something we already know. We have some awareness of these things. Being a human, impermanence, karma arising and reacting to karma, and there's just so much suffering in samsara. So these reminders are often, some teachers have their students contemplate these reminders before they do any other practice, whether it be shamatha vipassana, shikantaza, tantric yogas, whatever. They have their students start with this. Sokuzan did something similar to that with me when I met him. And so that's kind of what the end of this second reminder is talking about. This body will be a corpse. We know that. We don't think about it often. And then we don't know what happens after that with consciousness. Or maybe if you do, then let me know. And it's saying at that time, the Dharma or the truth, or in our case, the Buddha Dharma, will be my only help. I must practice it with exertion. And that today that reminded me of a saying that Sokuzan used to say more often, I believe. I can remember it. Don't learn how to ski in a blizzard. Is that correct? Something like that. So you may have to. I mean, you may just, if a blizzard comes and you're not trained, maybe you will learn to ski. But what we're saying here is you have a very unique opportunity to have this form with these senses, perceiving, observing, receiving, producing. And if you run into the Buddha Dharma and a teacher and a community, it's saying, I must practice it with exertion. That sounds kind of parental. They're all kind of parental, but I feel that anyone who's been on the path for a while kind of automatically starts feeling that way eventually, where things get really difficult and reference points fall apart, and you can return to whatever truth has helped train your mind in the past. So that there's a sense of appreciation for how rare this is and what do you want to do at this time. Just contemplating death, your own death, it can freak people out sometimes, and they rush around and want to cross off their bucket list or something similar to that. Or you can get very nihilistic and depressed and give up, and myriad other ways we could react to contemplating death. And it's being recommended here to exert ourselves in trying to understand what this is, using teachings, teachers, communities, different meditation practices, training our mind so that I think ideally, when the time of death comes, whenever that may be, perhaps there could be the same curiosity as we had during a block sit or a long retreat. We could watch that process unfold. Let's move to questions. Any questions? Erlam.
Erlang bowing. At least in the one I have, I'm not sure about yours. The full title says that turn the mind towards the Dharma. And I'm curious about that part of it where it seems like these are a slogan and then some, like there's like some kind of intention, like we're using these to turn the mind towards the Dharma. What does that mean?
It means, reiterating what I said earlier, all four of these we're aware of. This This isn't new information to us, although it may be put into words in a different way than we're familiar with, and the way it's put into words may bring us deeper into each of these concepts. These are concepts within this illusion. It's also said the four reminders that turn the mind toward the Dharma and away from samsara. That's an even longer title. So, trying to think how to say this. Like a formal way of studying these is to sit down, do a little bit of just settling meditation, just let yourself chill for 5-10 minutes. And then for 5 minutes, you read the first one. And then whenever you find yourself drifting away, come back to it. And just keep returning to whichever one you're contemplating. 5-10 minutes. And so this is what's done like in the Nundro practice that I do. This is one of the first things you do. So it's really, if you take the time to contemplate these and deepen them within your own mind stream, it's very likely, from my point of view, that it's going to kind of mix with what's already here. And like it says, you might find yourself turning toward the Dharma. It might even be surprising how much that happens. And maybe seeing the futility of like samsaric success, I guess, something like that. More?
Shoshi bowing.
Shoshi.
This particular slogan or teaching has been showing up for me for a few months now. The one aspect that I'm really curious about and how you interpret it is this idea of meaning. Now I must do something meaningful. It seems like could that be like karate or race car driving or building a snowman? Like it seems very loaded. Like they're saying going towards the Dharma is the meaningful thing that I'm implying here. But is it? And that if that's the case, how does the Buddhist understand meaning?
Yeah, that like meaningful.
Meaningful, yeah.
It's probably personal. I mean, if karate is your most meaningful path and it has a spiritual element for you, maybe that is what shows up. It's a bit, the whole thing is a bit loaded. It's a little bit of an assumption that you already have a connection with Dharma, and it's likely the most important thing for training your mind. So now I must do something meaningful. That could mean a lot of things within Dharma as well. So sitting, practice, study, meeting with a teacher. It could be making dinner for everyone. I don't know if that answered your question.
I'd like Shoshiban. I think there's something there. I'm just very curious about this idea of making meaning out of something. And it looks to me like a like I decide what's meaningful. But I'm curious, is that how do you interpret what you decide is meaningful in your own life?
Hmm. Doesn't feel like I decide. That can come up, like just in the busyness of every day, thinking I'm making decisions and deciding what needs to happen. But the more I look at that area, it I just seem to align with the Buddhist teachings as being the most meaningful thing to me. You know, I feel it right here. But over many years of practice, I've I've I don't know that I've stepped away from the path, but there have been times where there have been intense obstructions and big distractions. And there's something about returning to the Dharma repeatedly and seeing that over and over that is powerful. The word meaningful is a little, it's tripping me up a little bit. We use the word meaningless too. I don't think it's either one of those. Meaningful is the word meaningful, or what does it mean? You know, like all those things doesn't mean anything. Like, you can make up what something means, as we see in the news. But it's not meaningless either. It's like one of those, there's a duality there again that it, it's not one or the other, both or neither kind of thing. But so I don't, when I'm contemplating these, there are certain words like that that don't really work for me, and I don't really have a replacement necessarily, but I do some of that duality checking, I guess. Is that kind of the area you're looking at?
Yeah, ChokuDawa, yeah, there's a lot there. A question that showed up for me while you were speaking was the idea of um, meaning by comparison. So, can you have meaning if you don't have something that distracts you from the thing that you know is meaningful, even though you don't know what that thing is? Like you were saying, you've stepped away from the Dharma on occasions. Was there something that you felt was missing? Was there something that was like had less meaning in your life, or was it like a that over there has more meaning? I should go to that, or
Mm. Yeah, there's something like that, the way you're describing that. And I have to say, it's very relative, that area. Part of dancing with the illusion for me has been getting distracted. And then it's, it's interesting to enjoy a distraction at the same time practicing a lot and studying a lot and seeing it that way. And then it's another thing to almost practice not at all, maybe study not at all, and be completely in a world of distraction. Um, but that brings me back to the awareness of that. So seeing all of that has been important for my path personally. And then some of those distractions lose the magnetism sometimes. Sometimes they're equally meaningful, but it can just look um, like you and I are both into music, but often I step away from music to just focus on practice and study. And there's just some kind of sense of that's going to help me more. That has helped me more, as far as I can tell, with, I guess, what you would call like really traumatic sections of my life where I wasn't able to practice much, but I was extremely grateful that I had practiced, that I had some training to really receive extremely painful situations. But being a musician didn't, as far as I can tell, wasn't directly helping me with that situation. So there's that kind of distinction for me. Um, I think all the other things do help. They're not separate from Dharma, so they help somewhat. And what do I mean by help even? Yeah. Any more on that?
So much, but I won't. I won't keep going too much. Maybe one more.
Okay.
So the I what seems to the theme that keeps showing up is the meaning, and it occurs to me that you found meaning in this the trauma.
Mm.
Is that a meaningful? Can trauma be a meaningful practice?
Personal truth. Yeah, suffering. And that comes up kind of in the fourth one more, where it describes all the things we love about samsara are actually just a feast before we get our head chopped off. So that kind of like, it's not that you can't enjoy things, but we idealize and we ignore the things we don't want to look at, and then we get surprised by them later. So yeah, the suffering, when we receive suffering directly, I think it ends up pointing us towards something like Buddha Dharma. Maybe it's, even if it's not Buddha Dharma, some kind of path that we can actually work with our body mind situation. And I guess the word be prepared is coming up. How do we prepare ourselves for imminent death, suffering, all the negative things that we typically avoid? We might have to look right at them while we have this situation, while we have this human birth, and things are balanced just enough. We're suffering, it sucks, but we still eat and have friends and play music. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Milka.
Milka buying, can not doing be something meaningful?
Um, do you ever not do anything?
No.
You kind of did right there. Um, I guess what comes up right away is we endeavor to sit still and do as little as possible and observe whatever's still tinkering around. And then there's the word renunciation, which can be kind of militant sometimes, but I feel that when it's coupled with the word revulsion, there can be a natural sense of renunciation, like having some of your distractions lose their juiciness, and it's not a big problem. You're not really worried about it. Any more on that question?
Milka buying, when I contemplate that, I must do something meaningful. Oftentimes it looks like I should kind of hold my horses because I'm looking, it brings up like looking for that thing that's meaningful.
Mm.
So when that shows up, is there anything to do with that?
Well, I would ask your teacher that question, but since you're asking me at this moment and you're a Buddhist monk, you've already said the most meaningful thing for you, basically, from what I understand, is the vow, the Dharma. So, not that you shouldn't question that ever, but there's a sense of that might be what's most meaningful to you. And everything else can be meaningful, but how does it relate to the vow? I guess I would come back to the vow. Does that address the question?
Yokomawa, yes. And when you say come back, are you also saying returning?
Yeah, come back, returning.
Thank you. I have another question. You said when we take survival too far, what did you mean by that? Sometimes I think you said maybe qualified it with sometimes, or I don't have the exact words. Um,
Yeah, I'm not even sure what I mean by that. It's come up in a few book studies where just the basic mechanism that we have of body mind situation with senses and everything, there's a survival quality that we don't need to negate. Like hunting and gathering, getting food, shelter, loved ones, community, all of those things. But then we could take like something like gathering and turn it into greed. It was like taking any of those just basic things that we do that we just function to continue being a human being, taking it too far and trying to get more than just out of some kind of fear. And then it can turn up in social structures where we start reacting to things that aren't really there. We're projecting onto someone, then they're projecting onto us, and now we have a war. And there's just some kind of basic functioning that we could also return to, perhaps.
Yokomawa in that basic or in the functioning, not necessarily the basic, but what is it we should look at when something like comes up like that that feels like there's a survival instinct happening.
I think the way you said, what should we look at? We should look at that. If, and that it just keeps coming back to how important it is to sit down and train your mind because we miss those things and then we validate them and justify them, and society will swoop in and support that. Of course, you're right. That person abused you. You need to get a lawyer and you need to punish them and get what you deserve. And maybe that's true. It seems like there's a lot more of that than there needs to be. So, and the phrase "don't do anything unless you have to," I feel is really powerful. And you might phrase that a different way for yourself, because it can be, sometimes I can gloss over that as just a slogan that I lose the meaning of. But being aware of how this side of the duality is reacting to something, and maybe there's a really intense force that wants to produce something. I can think of someone right now that I would like to write a short novel to let them know to knock it off. And so far I haven't, but that may happen. Any more on that? Or did I even answer it?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Chandrima.
Kanjama bowing. The first reminder feels like a recognition of the path. And the very first thing, besides gratitude or appreciation, you know, taking the first step on the path, is seeing fixation. I see the second reminder as, life of beings is like a bubble. Body is a corpse. These very flat statements that can be, on one level, look like death. Life is impermanent, but also like looking at your fixation.
Mhm.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, and on that the very first thing on the path is see your fixation, see how you're grasping onto this life.
Mm.
Bowing.
Thank you for that question. I hadn't thought of the word fixation. That fits really well with how we try to control the impermanence. Like, in a sense, we're somewhat fine with impermanence. We even use it to support a sense of hope. If something's really intense, we'll wait it out because we know it won't last. But you're talking about fixation, so I'm not sure where to go with that. Can you go into it further?
Chandrima bowing. Well, then my next question is looking at these four reminders, and are they encouraging us to engage in the illusion or see that we're attached to the illusion? We're trying to move the illusion. Are they encouraging us to engage with the illusion or see that it is an illusion?
Mm.
Bowing.
The way you asked the question, I would say both of those. What these do for me is, and it seems like a traditional way that they're taught, is that they remind me why I practice, what I'm practicing. Like, what's the point of sitting for 4 hours? I can flash on this and it's like, yep, I need to do this. But that's from hours and hours of contemplating these and, having them memorized and just thinking about them whenever they come up.
Chandrima bowing. I just want to visit one more time the idea that that second reminder seems to be like the priority. Once you're on the path, your priority is to see fixation. Sokuzan says the three poisons. See what you're doing to try to manage whatever is showing up because you have a fixed idea of what it should be or who this is or what that is. So I guess I'm really curious about the priority. Is that, how does that make sense that that's the very first thing that we need to do once we're on the path is see impermanence, if that's the word you want to go with, or fixation, bowing.
Not sure if this will address. I guess what I mentioned another time talking about these 4 reminders was, like a lot of the lists, I tend to flash on them as one thing, but then contemplate one piece of it. And then that piece starts talking to the other parts. So I can't just for me, impermanence and fixation are, I don't know, they're like the same thing. And so we have this human form, free and well favored. It's going to die any second. And in that, however much time we have, there's all this stuff coming up and we're reacting to it or not. And the whole thing is set up to for that 4th one, which is all the things we love, our friends, family. I mean, how many times have you had a friend who is now your enemy? We saw a lot of that here a while ago. Not that you would particularly think of yourself as their enemy, but there's that sense of things just flipped. No matter how wealthy you are, this body's still gonna be gone. So having all of that right in your face, and with the sense that you want to see what this is. And all the reminders will still be occurring, and yet it's an illusion, and we're being told we could see that for ourselves, our no selves. So that's my best guess on that. The 3rd time asking that question. Is that getting closer?
It's just very helpful to hear, kind of looking at it, yeah, in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone online? Deb?
Deb Bowing. I first want to just tell you how I appreciate and how much gratitude I have for this talk. I found myself today using the phrase, I'm free and well favored, a number of times to check in with people about how I'm doing. And in that, I recite the 4 reminders before my sit at my altar. That's one of my constant practices that I do. So the meanings that we're all contemplating and discussing tonight, they're all different interpretations. And how I interpret it is sounding different in some ways from how others I'm hearing talking. Is there a correct or right? And I know that's, part of our looking at the duality of everything, but in this, is it okay to have my own meaning about these 4 reminders, seeing as I say them almost every day, bowing?
I think so. I think that's the best way to move into these is see what arises for you as you're contemplating them. As much as you can, make it personal. And then if you're lucky enough to have a teacher, you can run it by them once in a while, and they can refine that for you. If not, you can also there are texts that can help with that. Just and I say that with a little bit of hesitancy because I wouldn't want you to go read a text about the four reminders and then adopt that as your personal experience. So I actually appreciate that you're contemplating them on your own and seeing what comes up. And then you could see what other teachers say about them and use whatever seems to help you train your mind.
I appreciate and thank you very much. That's helpful. And to that, I'm also, of course, listening to others and how they're utilizing or seeing those four reminders. So, of course, that's helpful as well. If I may, just share the free and well favored part. As when I say that, I guess I'm looking to maybe have some reaction from you, or just to share a little bit about how I do it. When I say that, what my intention is to look at the ways in which I'm not suffering in this life. And yes, there's comparison, there's duality, how others, often refer to Gaza or to Ukraine, that I'm not living there. And somehow in that, I'm then going to what I consider to be, I must do something meaningful. And that is the sadness that comes to me about the other suffering of other beings. And so in that way, I feel like somehow it's taking me on a path to be with all beings, away from my own, in a sense, even though I'm quite aware of my own suffering. Is that how does that reflect for you, Bowing?
Sounds good to me. You often receive feedback from Sokuzan that you're doing it, and that's exactly what I would say. If it's leading to more awareness of other beings suffering, that's the vow. So at some point, that's the only reference point, from what I understand. Just keep going.
Thank you. And again, thank you for the talk tonight.
Thank you for your questions. We have about 9 minutes left if there are any more. Jashin?
I'm also thinking about meaningful, especially in the context of different understandings presented tonight. And I'm wondering if meaningful could be anything which is allowing us to see what all of this illusion is about. Bowing.
It could be that it feels like it could be tricky in that area, that I'm thinking of the example of if I say I meditate by walking through the woods, that example that we use sometimes. Personally, I discern that as walking in the woods, and when I'm on the Zafu, that's my meditation. But I've many times heard people call other things meditation. So they may be using the idea or the concept of meaningful to discern that this thing that really does, I mean, it's palpable. It's a really good idea to walk through the woods. You get a lot of goodness out of that. But as someone on the path, does that, if that was your meditation and you don't do sitting meditation, is that going to help you train your mind to see what this is? Maybe impossible, maybe, but just from my own experience and perhaps yours, the most meaningful, I'm so sick of that word.
What's the meaning of meaning?
Yeah, it's meaningless at this point. We've looked at duality and there it is. Um, yeah, I just have to return to the practice of sitting meditation, even when Dharma teachings fall apart. That happens to me sometimes where I cannot read Dharma. But I know how important it is to sit still and look at whatever's occurring, whether it's Buddhist or not. And having a lot of training from this gentleman, our teacher Sokuzan, and a lot of reading and sanghas and all of that. Am I getting near your question?
Jishin, yes, thank you. I think this is the way I was looking at this as well, and I'm also wondering how receiving can be seen as meaningful. Downing.
It may not feel meaningful. I think we should include that. It may feel completely wrong to receive someone screaming at you for 3 hours, and it might be wrong. Some of the meaningfulness of receiving, I think, for me, comes from having it emphasized so intensely by my teacher. He specifically uses that word receive and emphasizes it a great deal. And I haven't come across another teaching. I read a lot and it's not said that way anywhere else. Although I may run into it somewhere because that keeps happening. But so having devotion seems to come up where it's not trust necessarily. It's more like you're having devotion to another human being who is well versed in practice and study and perhaps sees what this is and is able to emphasize what will be meaningful to you. Sometimes it's specifically to you, and other times it seems to be important for most people. Any more on that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Sokuzan.
Thank you. So the things show up in so many different ways, even though there are categories and structures and concepts to point to that. But specifically in the way you're presenting here and the way you're giving your talk on this important topic that I know you've studied for a long time, I would even say, I know that you've even said so in this talk, you've made several self-references to you, yourself, to your practice, to how much you practiced, and to another way that you do it is to say the way I see it, the way I see it, and so on. I'm wondering how you might relate to the pride that shows up in that area, if in fact it even shows up. Could you comment on that, please, from your own subjectivity?
Yeah, pride shows up very subtle in that I would even say I study a lot, or been practicing for, I'll often say I've been practicing for 25 years. So the pride there, it also shows up in not wanting to say that, to not want to look prideful. And making hand gestures that are elegant, that feel good. There's pride about, I'm proud of myself for not knowing what I'm going to say and then talking about this topic. And another big area of pride that shows up is any reference to Vajrayana Tantra type teachings, because I've practiced those and they're inspiring, but there's a ton of pride there. So again, like not wanting to talk about them, not wanting to look prideful. And I'm even proud of talking about pride right now. So it goes on.
So are you, the teacher quite often says, in the context of teaching, that I've been practicing for over half a century. Are you proud of me for saying that?
I'm proud of me for being your student. I have a teacher who's practiced for half a century, so it's self-referential again. I can't even give you the pride.
No gold star for me or for you. Very important to look at the credential mentality of the ego, the part of the consciousness that is tied into a knot. That's all I'm asking you to comment on. You can comment further if you have it. Up to you. That's my question.
It seems like as an identity or an ego, we can, every single thing can turn into a credential, like every detail, almost like whatever you're aware of. You can even be proud that you're aware of something that you weren't aware of before. And that's embarrassing, but still there's pride about. I don't think I can see all the pride. It's 7 p.m. Is there a final question? Or we can dedicate the merit. Okay, thank you so much.